stretching and breath work techniques. Then we'll do a check-in, and Taylor is going to talk to us about mindfulness and some mental health resources. And then we will hear from Carrie, who will talk about transitioning to liftoff and give some information around there, as well as Jennifer. And then we'll finish off with some affirmations for you all to take with you after this presentation to help boost the motivation to finish off the class. So, why are we doing this? So, there's always concern, especially coming down to the end of class, the stress, trying to finish assignments on time, trying to make sure that you're grasping all of the material that you can. Also, stress from the outside world, from what's happening with the pandemic, and also just making sure that you all know that you don't have to wait to take care of your mental health. Like, any time is a good time to be more present and watch out for any red flags, and hopefully start with prevention before we have to step in with our mental health resources. So hopefully this can help, and hopefully these are also things that you can take with you outside of LC 101, outside of your career and into your personal life. So first, we're going to do some stretching and breath work. We're going to start with the stretching first and then move into the breath work. So feel free to turn off your camera if you don't feel comfortable being on camera and stretching. Um, and do what makes you feel most comfortable. So this is going to be a sitting stretch. You don't have to stand up unless you would like to, but we're really just going to work a little bit, move our body a little bit around. So we're moving some of that energy around from the day, especially if we've been sitting down, if we've been just idle. Hopefully this can loosen you up a bit. So first we're going to start with head rolls. We're going to go to the right first for 8, and then to the left for 8. So starting to the right, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you're going to pull your head to the right and pull it to the left. And you're going to come back to the center. You're just going to roll your shoulders back. And then you're going to bring them to the front. And reach your hands up as far as you can. Just stretch it out. Oh, that feels good. And release and shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Short, sweet, something you can do at your desk, something that you can do if you just need a little short stretch to get you back moving again. So next we'll move on to 2 breathwork techniques that I personally use, but also found to be beneficial for relieving stress, for when approaching overwhelming situations, and trying to like get the juices flowing to be able to work throughout the day. So the first one is square breathing, and you'll see a graphic included here on what that looks like. So you're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, releasing for 4 seconds, and then holding at the bottom for 4 seconds. So we're going to try that. We're going to do it 3 times, and then we'll move on to the next breathing exercise. So we're going to start with our breathing in for 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, holding for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, release, 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 1, 2, 3, and again, go, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, release, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, release, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and we can move on to the next one. And so this next technique is called lazy 8 breathing. So benefits are similar to square breathing in that it helps to reduce anxiety and stress. It helps to reduce pain sensation and also helps you improve your concentration. So as you can see on the diagram, you start at the bottom, and it helps also if you can trace the 8 as you're breathing. So as you're breathing, you're going to trace the 8 down and around in. And once you get back to that middle point is when you're breathing back out to come back around and start again. So we'll do that twice, and then we will move on to Taylor. So first, we're going to start breathing in 4, 2, 3, 4, and out 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out 1, 2, 3, 4. And you all will have access to these resources. I'll be posting them in the resource channel, so you'll have these techniques if you ever want to revisit them again.
So after that, we're going to do a quick check-in. So I'm going to take over screen sharing for a second, just so we can see this word cloud. But basically, you're going to go to menti.com and use the code 8640. I'll put it in the chat. I'm not going to make you memorize it. 1 second. Oh, chat is disabled. Okay. Sarah, could you share your screen one more time just for that with that slide as people navigate to the website?
And I can re-enable chat here if you just want to share that link too. So
Sure.
I apologize for that.
It's okay. So if you go to menti.com, and then I'll copy the code. 1 second.
Sorry, I'm majorly struggling with my sharing here.
It's okay. I realize actually I could, it'll show up on the screen. So I'll just share. Love to figure out technology. Great. Lovely. Love when things work. So it'll tell you at the top of the screen, menti.com, and use the code up there. It'll ask you to put in 3 words to describe how you're feeling right now. And then live as the words come in, we can watch and see how others are feeling. And everyone can do this. Success coaches can do this. Class managers can do this. Mentors can do this. I assume people have submitted, but it's not popping up.
I've submitted.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and refresh. I love when technology doesn't work too.
When you were sharing, it was showing a person count in the bottom right. Or I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's still, yeah, it says 48 people have responded, and it's not. There we go. Okay, I got it. love once again. There we go. Would have been more exciting if it was live, of course, but. So I'm seeing stressed, tired, happy, interested, exhausted, nervous, tired, overwhelmed, determined, apprehensive, in need of caffeine, well fed, that's good. I'm resonating with a lot of this as a grad student and as a person. So I'm seeing overwhelmed, concerned, forward-looking, worried, anxious, nervous. Hopefully we have a few resources in the next few slides to help with those feelings, and by the end we'll feel a little bit more calmed, feel like we'll a little bit more prepared to deal with those feelings. I'll wait a few more seconds while more people reply, and then in about 15 seconds I have to move on to the next slide in the interest of time. But thank you all for your participation in this. Legos, multiple people are feeling Legos. That's interesting. I also love Legos. Okay, I'll switch it back over to Sarah, but I'll keep talking. I'm still here. So, since the onset of the pandemic, 63% of adults in the United States have reported struggling with mental health in one way or another since the onset of COVID-19. So it has exacerbated a lot of feelings of anxiety. We're noting more diagnosis of mental health, and we're in the mental health field correlating that with the fact that people have more time to go to seek mental health aid, but also we know that the pandemic is a collective trauma that we're all sitting through together, and that could ostensibly exacerbate a lot of mental health struggles. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over a lot of resources, but I'm going to begin with mindfulness. And here's why. So mindfulness, you may, as soon as I say the word mindfulness, and if you saw it in the agenda, you're like, I don't know about that, or like, I don't usually vibe with mindfulness, like it's hard for me to sit still. But there are a lot of different types of mindfulness that exist out there for a lot of different purposes that serve a lot of different functions in our brain and body. But mindfulness is defined as the act of consciously focusing the mind in the present moment without judgment and without attachment to that moment. So it's very similar to what we did earlier with Gabrielle. That is an act of mindfulness, in that you were paying complete attention to your breath and paying attention to the way that you were breathing, and accepting that breathing in the present moment. Empirical evidence shows that mindfulness can result in a number of really significant mental and physical health benefits, including increased emotional regulation, increased activity of brain regions associated with positive emotion, decreased anger and emotional irritability, confusion, and cognitive disorganization, reduction of cardiopulmonary and gastrointestinal symptoms in multiple illnesses, increased healing of psoriasis, and improved functioning of the immune system in patients with HIV. So there is a wide array of benefits for mindfulness, and this initially came as a surprise to me. I'm maybe guessing that it might have been a surprise to you. Put in the chat, if you have a moment, what you're most surprised by in the benefits of mindfulness, and any thoughts you might have about that. Because I never thought that it would be associated with any like actual physical health benefits. But as far as we know, mindfulness, psoriasis, super shocked. So psoriasis, I did a little bit more research on that one. Psoriasis is really connected to productions of cortisol and experiences of stress. And so if mindfulness can reduce stress and lower the effects, the generation of cortisol, the stress hormone, then it can reduce psoriasis, symptoms of psoriasis, increase healing in psoriasis. So there's a lot of like intermediary effects. So it's not like you do mindfulness and you immediately get better, but mindfulness has a lot of overall wide arrays of benefits. So here are some apps that include free mindfulness. There are a lot of different apps out there, but I chose these 3 because they're free and they have a lot of content on there. So Insight Timer is a lot of different things. You can record different experiences of emotions. And there's also 25,000 guided meditations from 3,000 different teachers on topics like stress, relationships, creativity, and more. There's all kinds of different mindfulness activities on there. Smiling Mind has fewer sessions, but they're more directed. So they're organized into really structured programs like Mindful Foundation, so like introductions into mindfulness, sleep, relationships, and workplace. But you can choose where you start. And then Stop, Breathe, and Think has many sessions, but there's a section called Learn to Meditate, which explains what mindfulness is and why it's beneficial, similar to what I've been giving you now, but more in depth, including some of the neuroscience and physiology behind it. So if you're like me, you'd like to know everything about everything, that's a good one for you. So I'm going to go over a mental health technique that a lot of different clinical spaces use to help identify patterns in emotions and cognitions, bring awareness to thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and eventually transform thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to be healthier, more positive ones. So this is called ABCs, and it begins with A, which is an activating event. So something happens, and it could be anything. It could be anything from like a catastrophic event, like a really difficult event, to a glass of spilled milk. Behavior, what did you do or your body do in response? So what did you immediately do, or how did your body feel? Cognition, what's going through your mind? Diagnostic, what are your emotions? What emotions are you feeling? Evaluate, what thought patterns do you recognize? And forward thinking, how can you think about this differently now and in the future? So I'm going to go over an example of this using a common worksheet in the next slide. With an example that you might encounter in your launch code experience. So I don't code. I'll be very open about that. I know very little about coding, except for what I've absorbed as a success coach, going to lectures and like understanding peripherally what coding is, but I know that it's frustrating. So for example, an activating event might be that your code failed. And this happens a lot as far as I know. It's a part of the process. But depending on how you were feeling that day or what had been going on in the previous days, this might be an activating event for anxiety. And so I get into these bits sometimes, like if I don't do well on an assignment or something happens and I'm disappointed in myself, I'll get a wave of anxiety, sort of my heart will start racing and I'll get a flush of warmth to my face and my head. I'll maybe start sweating in my hands, and I'll put it down immediately because I'm like overwhelmed. And the cognition that might happen when I'm in that moment is, I'm dumb, or I can't do this, or this is too hard for me, or like I'm not good enough for this. The diagnostic might be of the emotions I'm feeling are sadness, frustration, anger, a number of different emotions related to feeling bad about a failure. What thought patterns might I recognize? One is catastrophizing. I think that I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed, and especially when, for example, if you're coming into launch code and you're hoping to change careers, and that means this is really indicative of like what you want to do in your life, and you're hoping that this all works out. You might be putting a lot of emotional and psychological pressure on yourself to succeed. And it's important to recognize that you might be, you might fail once. Like for me, I might fail this one assignment or do not as well on this one assignment, but it doesn't necessarily mean, like I might think it does, that I'm going to fail out of my program or not do well in life. So that's called catastrophizing. And there's a lot of different examples under the evaluate. All or nothing, which means like I have to do this perfect or not at all. Blaming others, like this isn't my fault, it's the teacher's fault. Catastrophizing means like I'm going to completely fail and everything is going to go wrong because of this one failure. Emotional reasoning is I feel terrible, so this must be terrible. Fortune telling is I know that this is going to mean, this one failure is going to mean I'm going to get an F in this. That's what it's guaranteed to happen. Labeling can mean a lot of different things, but I'm labeling this as a failure, and that is the name that I'm giving it, but really it could just mean an error. Magnifying, this means a lot more than I think it does, and mind reading means like I'm reading the minds of the professor and they set me up to fail. Forward thinking, how can I think about this differently now and in the future? So since I just went through all that, I can think about, sit down, you know, failure is a part of learning. And in order to get to the next part, I have to fail and figure out where the errors are. And so thinking about it differently means like, as soon as I fail, that means that I'm going to learn. So resources for you. Your teaching team is a resource, your personal support network, so people in your life that you trust and feel safe around and feel like you can reach out to, and our mental health resources list, which we'll include at the end. And briefly in the next slide, I wanted to go over how to reach out to your support network. I think that like, for me, I have a lot of anxiety about asking people for help. And so just a brief ask for consent, relay some context and relay gratitude, ask how you can support them in the future. And there's some examples on the next slide, and you'll have these slides at the end, don't worry about it. But, you know, do you have the emotional mental capacity for me to vent about something medical or weight related for a few minutes? And there's another example. And then on the bottom is an alternative. So if you don't have time to respond to someone because you're working on something or at emotional capacity, here's a prompt for you to send to someone who's reaching out for you to help them, and you're not at capacity, or you're at capacity and cannot provide that space for them. And now our transition to liftoff conversation, headed up by Carrie.
Thanks, Taylor. I was actually headed into liftoff right as the pandemic started. Like I think we had maybe 2 classes in person, and then we had to just scramble and split, and it was crazy. But we survived, and now today there's, you know, everyone's kind of gotten used to this thing, I think. But I, you know, remember what it felt like having just graduated and looking at liftoff and going, what am I in for, right? And I had a lot of different mixed feelings. I mean, there was this exhilaration after graduation, this sense of accomplishment, but I was also very overwhelmed because I knew there was going to be lots of new things for me to learn, that I, you know, my group, we actually did a full stack project where we did an Angular TypeScript front end and a Java Spring back end. So we had to learn, you know, how to create a RESTful API. A lot of the things that we did, that were a little ambitious, we had to learn a lot of advanced syntax, how to write a technical resume when you haven't worked in tech before, how to do live coding, and actually, you know, get through the problem and solve it on the fly in front of an interviewer. Interviewing in general, I mean, so many different things to have to pick up. And I think all of us were struggling with this imposter syndrome about, you know, am I really going to be ready 9 weeks from now? Am I, you know, going to be able to sound like I know what I'm talking about and articulate these technical concepts? But I also had a lot of excitement because I love to learn, and I was so eager for this big change that I'd been working so hard for already for the last, you know, 6 months before that, that I was ready to do this thing. I think that some of the things that I did to kind of help reduce my stress during all of this overwhelm was to stay organized. There are a lot of moving parts because you've got the career module and the project module kind of going on at the same time. But LaunchCode has done an amazing job of giving you a framework to help keep track of everything. So you just kind of have to keep coming back to that. If you're in a group project, communicating regularly with each other is critical, and that will help reduce your stress because you will be able to see what each other is working on, learn from each other, make sure everybody's on the same page, and it'll move forward much more smoothly. If you are in an individual project, I think this is especially important. You want to make the most of your mentor. They are there to guide you. They do not have an answer key for what you're doing because everybody's projects are different, but they have experience and can definitely help you kind of get yourself oriented, figure out where to start, and then occasionally even help with some technical things that might come up. So be proactive. Make sure that you are asking them for times to meet outside of class when you really need help. And also just make use of all the good resources that come from mentors and classmates on Slack. And you guys already know that. You've been doing that for the last 6 months. I also think it's important to think a little bit about your home learning environment. I actually have a presentation that I did for Coda Girl that I believe Gabrielle's going to share with you later. And it can make such a difference to your mental health just to think about a few things about the way you've set up your learning environment and how you block out your time, and give yourself ways to stay calmer and concentrate more and be more productive as a result. Anytime you do get stuck, walk away. If you're still stuck after that, switch to something else and come back later. I imagine some of you have already practiced that quite a bit too. It will be no different for you in Liftoff. And then start early on practicing your live coding. That was something that we've been encouraging students now to do in Coder Girl, but we didn't really talk about it as much when I was in LC 101. And I decided like 3 weeks before the live coding stuff came up in Liftoff to just get back on HackerRank and Code Wars and start blowing through some problems. And it got me back to where I felt like I was connecting to the things I was doing in Unit 1 with JavaScript and the problem solving, writing little algorithms and things that will really help you kind of get back in that mindset. So you want to try to set aside some time every week to do some things like that to help you prepare. Just by way of encouragement, when you do feel stuck, learn to sit with that discomfort and frustration, because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it with you. That's actually normal. It is a part of coding. You are going to get stuck. You will be frustrated, and it's okay because learning curves are painful. It just is. But you also can be really proud looking back, thinking about the amazingly large volume of knowledge and new skills that you've picked up in the last few months. You have come so far. Don't forget that. Don't lose sight of it. And also, this process is designed to help, kind of boost you into this new career that you're, looking for, most of you. So enjoy this process. Every step along the way in Liftoff, writing a tech resume, learning to live code, interview, and all the different project milestones that you're going to have. Every single one of those brings you that much closer to your final goal. So keep all of that in mind. And I would say remember what your motivations are for getting into this in the first place, because that will definitely keep you going when it gets rough. That's it.
Thank you, Carrie, for sharing your experiences. And we're also going to see a few more experiences, but first we're going to have, and Sarah, you can also reshare your screen. We're going to have some best practices along with what we just heard from Jennifer, who's just going to explain a little bit about those best practices.
So Carrie was so spot on with what she said about liftoff. My background right now, I'm the success coach, like I said, for the new Coder Girl cohort, but I just graduated from the previous Coder Girl cohort in the Java track and have been in liftoff for the last 4 weeks. I think tonight is week 4. And so these are my thoughts on liftoff as well. So start thinking about what your project ideas are now, because it can help you really sort of refine what you want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, then the first place to start is think about whether you want to do an individual or a group project. To think about the time that it will take versus the support. And so for me, I ended up starting a solo project, which was because I have kids and a lot of other responsibilities, and I was juggling a lot, and I didn't want to be the weak link in a group. But it's now all on me to do all the work for the group project. And I have friends who are for my solo project, I have friends who are in a group project, and they are finding that there are different challenges, but that it's kind of nice because the load is shared. So think about what feels good, what works for you, how you might want to structure that. But plan to maintain around 15 to 20 hours a week, probably what you're about spending right now between class time and work for homework and stuff like that. But plan to keep that schedule for your project work. And in terms of the recommendations that they give you for liftoff, in terms of figuring out a project to work on, think about something that you can identify as a problem and something that you might want to do. Like one of my ideas, which you all are welcome to take this, but one of my ideas was a chore tracker for my kids, so that like I could keep track, like a chore leaderboard, like I could keep track of what their allowance was, how much I owed them, and all the jobs that were still left to do. And then we could maybe gamify it a little bit and have a little bit of competition among the kids to try to get like more things done for us, but get them to earn more money. So because I have no idea how much I owe them, because we do this running thing and they like to use it to buy games and things. And anyway, I was just trying to make my life easier. So is there something that would make your life easier? Or is there something that would make, something at your work, or somebody like one of your family members, is there some problem that you can solve with your project? So that's a starting place to think about what you want to do for your project. And there are support structures in place, and the expectations are clear. They will tell you week by week, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. So that's really, really good. But anything you can start to think about in terms of the organization now will help you move into that a lot quicker and a lot more smoothly. And that goes to the next bullet point. Think about what you can control versus what you can't control. You're going to have some knowledge, but you will not have probably enough of all of the tools to make all of the things work. So you're going to need to find some resources. So start to think about those resources. And your the mentors are amazing, but they may not have the exact skill set that you are wanting to learn. So you will have to go and do some additional learning on your own. So think about ways to figure out how to get supports around that. And again, you may have, like work or family or different things like that, but try to think really carefully and structure your time in a way that provides you with the support so you can really do the project work. Because I'll tell you, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. And I'm really having a lot of fun learning. Like I decided I wanted to learn a new CSS package. And so I'm learning a new CSS package, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but it's fun. And I get to play around and turn things, different colors and play with the buttons. And anyway, you should have fun with this also. So focus around what you want to learn and where you want to go with this, as well as you're thinking about your projects, so that you can work on something that really has meaning to you and really provides value for your liftoff experience. So those are my words of wisdom from my own experience to add on to what Carrie said.
And if you needed any more additional stories, we have a What I Wish I'd Known Padlet from some other students who went through liftoff. And there's some responses there that about just helpful tips and things that they wish they would have known as they went through the process of liftoff. Thank you, Carrie. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is some virtual resources. So we have 3: BetterHelp, Free Black Therapy, and Peer Collective. And I think Taylor, if you wanted to provide like a little blurb about each.
Yeah, BetterHelp, you might have gotten a lot of targeted Instagram or Facebook ads about, but it's actually really helpful. You can chat online with a trained clinician through your phone, or you can text with them, and they also connect you with a local therapist. Free Black Therapy provides, I think it's up to 5 free sessions for Black folks seeking therapeutic help. And Peer Collective, I think, Jen, you know more about that one than I do. Nope. Sarah? I can't recall what that one's about. But I'm sure it's helpful if we put it on there.
I think there might be links to these in the notes. So I'm sure I knew about it once upon a time, but I think sharing the presentation, we can make sure to include a link to the actual resource.
Yes. And then 2-in-1 will, if you call 2-in-1 and press 1, it'll connect you to a crisis line for behavioral health response, who is one of the most respected and established mental health organizations in St. Louis, and they're very well prepared to assist you in a mental health crisis, a number of different mental health crises. Squish is the queer hotline. I forget what it stands for. My brain not doing well today. But it is a queer affirming mental health hotline. And then the inclusive therapist directory is very similar to Psychology Today, where you can go online and search for a therapist that is inclusive of a given identity based on the search parameters.
So we wanted to end the presentation with some affirmations that you all can take with you as you're finishing up LC 101, as you're going into and transitioning into liftoff and outside of LC and liftoff altogether. So the first affirmation, I don't have to do this all on my own. The second, growth is not linear. The third, I will celebrate my progress. And the fourth, I can make this a priority because this is important to where I want to go. So these are short sayings that you can say daily to yourself, things that you can use in conjunction with your breathing techniques, things that help continue to boost your motivation and drive to finish your projects, your assignments, and to accomplish anything that you are wanting to accomplish at this time. So please take these with you. Again, you'll have access to these as well as the other resources mentioned in this presentation. So we hope that it has been helpful, and we hope you're able to utilize these as much as we took the time, making sure that they were the best of the best for you all. So on this last slide, here is all of our contact information, our email. If you need anything as far as resources, as we said, I'm the success coach for you all's cohort. Taylor is a success coach for another cohort. Sarah is a class manager, and Jennifer is the success coach for Coder Girl. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or want any more clarification about anything that we've talked about today, and we'd be happy to share those with you. So now I just want to open the floor up to if there are any questions, and I'm also going to put a link in the chat that goes to an evaluation. If you could please fill that out, let us know any information you want to give us about this presentation, what you learned, if it benefited you at all, and we would love to see those responses. Other than that, thank you so much for being here and being present with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Sarah. And let's see. And oh yeah, and yep. Who was the last one? I forgot. Who am I thinking of? Taylor. Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Jeez, I was like, oh, I forget. There are 4 of us. Oh, my brain is not working today either. So,
Need more breathing, Kyle.
I know, I did. I was doing the neck rotation exercises and the breathing exercises as you did them. Like that does help.
Yeah. Loved it. I forgot to mute my screen, but I was doing a lot of like almost drooling. I shared a video that Carrie made on how to set up a work environment to really promote your focus, have a soothing space for yourself. Huge fan of all of Carrie's resources. I just followed her on YouTube, but it's a 9-minute video and I highly recommend watching it. And Gabrielle just posted the evaluation. It's very short, I think like 3 questions, and it really helps us. We have some practicum students who are getting their social work degrees, so this is a great opportunity for them to implement your feedback in their presentations and in the resources they provide to future students.
Awesome. There it is. Yeah, and it's going to be in the chat, so I'm not going to, I'll disable the chat, but it should still be accessible there throughout the class. And then I'm going to copy this evaluation right now and just throw it in our general channel on Slack too, if anybody wants to grab that, and also all these resources here. Yeah, thank you again, Sarah, for sharing that. All right, and we'll get started here in just a second. Okay. There we go. All right. That being said, hello, everybody. Happy Monday. How is everyone doing? Did everyone do the neck relaxation and the breathing exercises, getting ready for this? Also grabbing coffee, hopefully, as well. Getting mentally prepared. Everyone relaxed, ready to learn about some fun stuff. Let me just get set up here and we will get going. Ooh. Did I just hear a yawn? Is that a yawn already?
No, I wouldn't dare.
Jeez, you haven't even started yet.
I'm permanently tired, man. I can't.
Give me at least a chance to bore you first before you yawn.
It's not you, it's me.
Bye, Ed and Nickel. All right. Let's go ahead and share the screen here. There we go. Share that. I am going to disable the chat, so just remember, if you do have any questions whatsoever, please throw them in the lecture questions channel. As always, I'm sure we now know. Jeremy, I see you enjoy the, hopefully you're enjoying the GIF. All right. What is this? SNL. This one's from SNL. I honestly just go to Giphy.com and I type in the theme of today and I just take the funniest looking one. So if anyone's wondering how I get these things, I love Giphy. I literally talk to my friends via memes. I don't even like message people actually things. I think that's just my millennialism going through, but I don't actually talk. I talk in emojis and memes now. And this is how I like to portray it. Okay. Did everyone get coffee? Everyone like awake? Everyone excited for this? Because we have some things to go through. Hopefully after our talk here too, you all do understand that what you're going through here, if you're feeling stressed, if you're just feeling overwhelmed, and also excited at the same time, anxious, those are all typical emotions, especially if you're feeling at the very end. You've been going through a lot for these past few months. And the fact that you are still hearing my voice, still on this call, tells me that you are just like the graduates who I've taught before, who you are approaching the graduation, that you can persevere for literally anything. This class is one of the most intense things I've ever had the pleasure of teaching and helping out in. So everyone here on this call today, know that you have been putting yourself through just a tremendous amount of learning, tremendous amount of challenging assignments and concepts, that it is just incredible to see all of you here still today, and hopefully excited to get into a lecture. So let's get started here. Today's conversation is about authentication. But as always, we're going to start here with some announcements. It is lecture 19 tonight. So a final reminder here is that Studio 19, the studio you're going to be doing tonight, is going to be due. This is a studio that I do recommend working alone and trying to figure it out yourself instead of coming into larger groups and doing it together, just because this is going to really cement some of the things about authentication. Additionally, for this studio, I will offer a very big hint, is that read the chapter 19 very carefully. It really does help you out overcome and finish Studio 19. That being said, another thing that will be due here coming up is assignment 4. Though it's not due yet, we are coming to that point where assignment 4 should at least be read in there. You're definitely working hard and diligently and asking those questions to overcome those any knowledge gaps that you might have. Finally, unfortunately, I have to give you one more day off from my voice. I do apologize, but there will be no lecture on Monday. When you do come to class on Monday, go directly to your small groups. I will not be here. Well, I will be here, but I won't be on screen. If you have any questions, feel free to always Slack me. But just getting you there. Any questions that I saw about the announcements, any questions about anything? I asked that because I need to take a sip of coffee.
So is Thursday our last lecture then? Because isn't next Thursday graduation? Or next Thursday is the 1st, right?
Is it Monday? I thought Monday was graduation. Who can confirm our graduation day? I thought it was Monday.
Graduation is the 5th.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Monday we don't have any class. The 1st we do have class. That will be our final one, covering rest. And then the 5th, Easter Monday, will be our graduation day. So don't forget about graduation. Monday, come to class and come excited.
And then Thursday is Studio 19, right? Not tonight. I thought tonight was not their work day.
No, I believe Monday is the work day. Tonight will be Studio 19, but you might be right. Let me double check that real quick. And let's go.
It's funny, I have Thursday as the work day.
Okay, let me get into the documents here and make sure. I thought I looked it up right before class, so let me see. Again, I'm drinking coffee for a reason, so let's see if it's working yet.
Oh yeah, I'm like a day behind, I guess.
Come on, internet. There we go. I need September 2020. Just to think, we started this in September 2020, the worst year ever going down in the history of years. And now we're into 2021. All right, so today is, okay, so today you will be still working on the studio for class 19. So Monday, yeah, you'll be working on the studio, but this studio won't be due until the end of class, but I do recommend not falling behind on this one. Finish up a Studio 19 tonight so you can work on assignment 4 as much as you possibly can. So, yeah, today's Monday. Wow. Okay, so Thursday is our work day. Wait, what is today? Today's Monday. Oh my gosh. No lecture. Okay, I'm behind a day. I'm thinking today is Thursday right now. That is how bad my days are literally meshing together. There is no lecture on Thursday. Today is Monday, so there's clearly lecture today.
Okay, that's what threw me off.
So that's what's throwing me off too. Is like, I thought today was Thursday. I literally went to the wrong meeting today at work because all my days are literally merging together. So no lecture on Thursday. I apologize. I'll put that in announcements as well. But yeah, so tonight we'll be working on Studio 19. Thursday you won't be hearing my voice. Monday come back for class because we'll be working on, we'll be doing our last lecture. And then graduation is on the 5th, what I heard from somebody. So.
Kyle, can I get some clarification on which studio is the graded studio?
So it will be the studio tonight. So Studio 19, I don't remember the exact name for it. Let me get that for you. But it is the last one we have if you look in the, look on chapter 19. It is Tech Jobs Authentication, Studio 19.6.
Okay, so then the studio about rest is not graded, but our assignment 4 is due on next Monday.
Correct. I do recommend doing the rest one as well because that will flow into what you're going to be doing in liftoff. So it will be very important as well. But no, Studio 19.6 Tech Jobs Authentication should be graded. Cool. Any other questions? Okie dokie. Let's keep going. So as we've been mentioning in nearly the theme for tonight, you all have been through quite some bit. So I wanted to go through and just go down memory lane. We've been together for so long. So let's go ahead and relive our past. What data type would the word pizza be?
String.
It'd be a string. Very good. Our string favorite food equals pizza. That's what our theme has also been, is pizza, since we've met. So keeping it there. Another one is, how would I create an integer array of length 6?
Int array of 6.
Very good. Int array. So we have int, those brackets there. Favorite numbers equals new int 6. Continuing on, what's the difference between the capital letters and the lowercase letters?
Primitive versus
Primitive types,
non-primitive.
non-primitive types.
Very good. The capital letter means a non-primitive, meaning we have helper methods inside of that. But the lowercase I stands for primitive. So there will not be any helper methods on these primitives. They're just the value. Very good. Let's keep moving on. How would we create a parrot class?
Public class parrot.
Very good. So we have class parrot, and then you told me this accessor already, so it's public. We should always make sure our classes are public. If we don't make it public, make sure you have a very good reason why you don't. Can anyone tell me the other accessors besides public? The two other ones we would use?
Private, protected.
Private and protected. Very good. What goes on top of classes always? What's the first thing we always declare?
Variables.
Our class variables.
Variables.
Yep, either one. Class variables or properties of our class, things like that. Any of those names will be meaning these class variables. What kind of accessor do our class variables always have? Private. Very good. What's the second part that always builds an instance of the class? What do we always include second in our classes?
Constructors.
Great. Awesome. How do we start building this constructor? Talk me through it.
Public parrot.
Very good. Public, and then the name of the class, parrot. Awesome. And then finally, what comes after all of this?
Getters and setters.
Getters, setters, and extra methods. In this case, talk me through walk me through making a getter for the parrot's name. What would I start with? It'd be public. Our accessors, this getter will be a public method. Then what else comes next? What's the name of the method?
String.
You are absolutely right. It should be string and then get name. Pretend there's a string there. I completely forgot the return type here. My head's in JavaScript mode. So it would be public string get method, and then we have our setter, which would be public void set name. Very good. And void means what?
No return type.
Absolutely right. No return type. All right. One more thing. I add this other constructor in here. What is this called?
Parameterized constructor.
We have a parameterized constructor. Very good. But we have two constructors here for one class. What is this called?
Empty constructor. One is blank constructor.
I heard it. Overloading.
Overloading.
We have two constructors for one class, or two methods that are named the same in one class. This is called overloading. It's how we can bring in different parameters to do different things for our parrot or whatever class we're in. Great job, everybody. Let's keep going. How would we create an instance of that parrot class?
Parrot object name.
So we have
That's
parrot.
It's going to be assigned to a new parrot
So
object.
a new parrot.
Very good. We use that keyword new and then parrot. The big thing we need here to create an instance of a class is always new. That creates a new instance of a class, creates us an object. In this case, a parrot. How about calling a method off of the instance? Say that get name getter method that we created. How would we do this?
My parrot or get me.
Very good. We use the name of the instance, my parrot, dot whatever method we want to call, get name. This is how we call to those methods. Let's keep going. What data structure grows, shrinks, and holds a collection of objects?
Array list.
Array list. Absolutely right. Great job. An array list. It will grow and shrink depending on necessity. What data structure uses key value pairs to save a collection of objects?
Hash maps.
Hash map.
Awesome. I'm loving it. Very good, everybody. All right. Let's move on to something we haven't seen too much from the past lectures. Which annotation are we missing here?
A test.
Very good. We know that this is a test because it says testing our parent constructor. This is a very clear hint that this is going to be testing something. To make a test in JUnit, we use the annotation @test. Now, tell me, in this test, we need to check an actual versus an expected value. What method do we typically use to do this?
Assert equals true.
Assert equals, we're not checking if anything's true here. We're checking if just two values, say the name of the parrot and Polly, are string. So we just use assert equals. Assert true and assert false is also a valid way of checking something if the value is just true or false. You'd use them respectfully. So this is bringing us back to those tests for a second. All right, so just pause here and note that answering those questions from you now know how to assign a data type, knowing multiple different data structures, how to create tests, how to build classes. You all have learned so much, and that was just in the first few lectures. So just reminisce on that for a second. You know coding. Maybe for some parts, implementation might be difficult because we're still wrapping our head around that. Know that you still know the architecture of coding. So let's keep going on and seeing how we built our knowledge as we progressed. We have two classes here. You know how to build classes. We just went over that. We have our dog class and our cat class. My question is, though, these two classes are very similar. We see we have an ID and a name both in the dog and the cat. When this happens, this indicates to us typically what? What do we need to build?
Abstract class.
Abstract class.
Very good. We need to abstract some of this data out into something more generic, building an abstract class. In this case, we build an abstract class called pet. So that we take the code that is duplicated between the two classes and we put it inside of this pet abstract class. Now we built the abstract class, but what keyword do we use to utilize this abstract class with our dog and our cat?
Extends.
Very good. We use extends. That word will bring in everything from the pet class into our dog class or our cat class. So we recycle all of this. Let's keep going. What other tool besides an abstract class do we use to create a contract between our classes? What other thing have we explored?
Inheritance.
Say it again.
Inheritance.
I think I heard it. Interface.
Yes.
Remember, abstract classes allow us to put variables in there. They allow us to put methods in there. We can do a lot of logic inside of abstract classes, but interfaces are just dry bone contracts. We can literally just put in the methods we want whatever classes to take inside of this interface. Again, just creating a contract. It's very bare bones in an interface, unlike abstract classes, which are much more nice. But my question is that we have this dog here and this pet, and we want to take an animal. What word do we use to bring in that interface?
Implement.
Very good. Everybody got it. Implements. Awesome. We use that implements keyword. So this is how we bring in an interface. Now do remember, you can extend an abstract class and implement an interface. You can only extend one abstract class, but you can implement as many interfaces as you want. Do you remember that? In this case, when we do implement that, we have to bring in that method that we had prior. So that speak has to be brought in to our class here. So we implement it here where it just says woof because it's a dog. Awesome. Let's keep going. Now things are looking a little bit more familiar. We've been working in this quite a bit. Who can tell me what this little architecture thing is called?
MVC.
MVC. Very good. It's called an MVC architecture. Now, I already heard some answers, but tell me, what does the M stand for in MVC?
Model.
How about V?
Views.
Views. And then?
Controller.
Very good. And that's what our MVC architecture looks like. It's what we've been working with from the ground up. So moving on, focusing only on the views. What tag starts an HTML page? Not, or very, excluding the doc type tag. What starts a web page?
HTML.
Very good. HTML. The second thing is, what tags contain the metadata, stuff that we don't see for a website? Very good. The head. Remember, inside the head, we don't see anything. We don't see our brain, but it keeps all that data in there, that metadata that we can use to identify and tell Google or other crawlers about our website. What tag contains what the user sees and interacts with on a page?
Body.
Very good. The body, that's what we see. That is what the user interacts with. The body tags. Anything in there will be presented onto your page. There we go. Take that breath. Look at how much you actually understand and can actually bring up and answer about questions. You all have come a long way. Let's keep seeing what else we've learned. How will we create the parent controller?
Public class parrot.
Add controller.
Public class parrot.
Very good. I heard all of it. I love all of it. You have that annotation at controller and then the parent controller right there. What mapping do we use to view or render a page?
Get mapping.
Very good. The get mapping. Now tell me, what's always the return type for one of these mappings?
Template.
Return.
It's a template, but what's the data type of the template? What are we returning in this method?
A string.
HTML.
Very good. A string. We're using a string here. So we say public string, view parrots, and then we would return whatever HTML it is. In this case, it's just an example. Of course, this doesn't exist, but parrots dash list. So we have a parrots dash list HTML hiding somewhere away in our templates. Wow, cannot talk. Okay. Which mapping is used to use when a form is submitted?
Post.
Post mapping. I like it. In this case, we'll just say that create route right there. Remember, inside those parentheses are where those routes are. This is how we're navigating to those pages. You've seen this before multiple times. Then we, of course, create that method once again. It returns a string also, exactly whatever HTML that you want the user to see after they post. Real quick, if I wanted to add some attributes to my template, what would I have brought in as a parameter?
Model.
Very good. Model. Awesome job. All right. Let's move on to our best friend here. Going back here to our controller. Tell me, who sends requests to the controller? I'll take two answers for this one.
The user.
Very good. The user, the UI, user interface, or the client side. Remember, if someone refers, which is a very popular term, to the client side, it means the UI, the user. You'll be dealing with this terminology more and more as you advance. After the request is processed by the controller, what does the controller respond with?
Response.
A response. Very good. We have requests to the controller and responses back from it. Very good. But tell me this, who persists or saves the data created by the controller? How do we persist data?
The database.
Very good. The database. This is our persistent layer. It literally saves our data for us so we don't forget it. Without it, the controller has a memory of a Dory. So it will literally forget its information the second the server is turned off. So that's why we need that database there. So let's keep moving forward. We're back to where we, well, kind of left off here and there. So we're going to talk about how would we create a credit card entity?
Entity. Class credit card.
Very good. Public class credit card. Awesome. Don't forget that annotation, at entity. That is extremely important. Of course, I'm always nice. I bring in some of those properties for us right there. ID, card number, expiration date, whatever. But tell me this, what are we missing at the very top for our ID, our unique identifier?
Generated value.
At ID and at generated value. Very good. Remember, generated value is not required, though very, very much encouraged right now during class. The thing that is extremely required is the at ID. Hibernate will very much yell at you if you don't have that at ID there in your entity. You need to tell it where its primary key is. Tell me this, in an entity, what kind of constructor do we always need?
Blank constructor.
Very good, a blank constructor, awesome job. And then of course the appropriate getters and setters for all of our information. All right, going with this credit card concept, let's take a person and a credit card here on two sides. Person on the left, credit card on the right. What relationship do they have?
One-to-one.
One-on-one.
One-to-one.
I'm hearing a lot of different things. Let's talk about the left-hand side first. A person. Can a person have one credit card or many credit cards?
Many.
Many.
Very good. Many credit cards. Credit cards can have one or many owners.
One.
One owner.
Very good, one owner. So therefore, what is this relationship?
One to
Many to
One
one.
to many.
One to
We
many.
go, remember, we go
Right to
right
left.
to left, right to left. So it would be a one to many relationship. Let's try one more. We have a person and a social security number. Let's start with the left-hand side.
One.
One.
We'd have one. A person can only have one social security number. The social security number can have how many people?
One.
Very good, one. So therefore, what is this one?
One to one.
Very good, a one-to-one relationship. Awesome job. All right, so these are our relationships. Do remember it goes right to left on the perspective. All right. Talking about, give me 1 second here. We'll talk about this teddy bear in a minute.
Have you seen the Liberty Mutual commercial with wet teddy bears?
No, I have not.
It's hilarious.
Eric, thank you very much for your feedback. I will try to understand why it's doing that. I have everyone's window on another screen, so I don't know why they're putting that there, but I'll try to move it up so it stops doing that. It's really weird that it does that. All right. So I'm hoping I'm recording the right, yeah, I'm recording the screen. Okay, that's weird. Hopefully it doesn't keep going. Do that, there we go. Okay, so we got our teddy bear here. So in this case, we were talking about what we did last time with the dog and the toy. So we have our page and we're adding a toy here. So we need to send over a post request to the controller. But this toy needed to be associated with a dog. We have a lot of information here. When we have all this information, when we're trying to send something over to the controller, what do we use?
Data layer.
Data layer.
Technically, we're using a data layer to talk to the database between the controller and the database. Here, we're talking between the page and the controller using a post request. We have a new kind of packaging that we learned about last class.
Yes.
Very good. That new kind of packaging packages up multiple versions or multiple models into one little shipment package, basically, to send over to our controller. So you're absolutely right. The DTO is what we use to package all of those models up and send it over in one smooth request to the controller. DTOs. You'll see that tonight also in your studio if you haven't done those exercises already. So get ready for that. Remember, they do exist and they are extremely helpful and help out with a lot more things than what we even covered. So any questions about any of that, all that stuff, anything from data types to data structures to, you're down here to DTOs, which I didn't get to learn until like 3 years into my education. So you guys are just killing it. So any questions about any of this stuff?
Can you explain what DTO is, what it stands for, what it means?
Data transfer object.
Okay.
Yep. So data transfer object is exactly what it sounds like. It transfers data in an object to your controller.
Yes.
Cool, cool. All right. Well, then I know everyone's just having a grand old time. I just see a bunch of smiles. Not really. Everyone's really just blank faced. Everyone's not sharing their camera with me, but I'm assuming people are smiling. So we're going to have more fun, even more. So I know everyone's having a great time now, but we're going to take a quick break and just relax and have some very fun facts real quick. Just take a pause. Who can tell me how many Grammys Elvis won?
5.
All of them.
I like it.
No.
Apparently, he only won 3 Grammys. Didn't even know that. Never even actually. I haven't really listened to Elvis at all. I always played the Elvis. What was that?
I would think they were before his time.
I have no idea. Not a Grammy person. Just found that as a random fact. That was interesting. I thought you'd have more, but never actually listened to Elvis. But don't tell anybody. All right, on to the next one. What was the first soda in space?
Tab.
Surge.
Bang.
Was it Tang?
Is Tang? I don't think Tang's technically a soda.
It's got bubbles, baby.
Does it? Okay, touche. All right, all right.
Anything has bubbles in space.
I mean, I've never been, so maybe. The correct answer is Coca-Cola. Of course it's Coca-Cola. They're first everywhere. So that was that one. And then finally, what is the speed of the what was the speed of the computer mouse measured in? What is?
DPI.
What was it?
DPI.
What is a DPI?
That's per inch.
That's there.
Oh, interesting. Maybe now, but it's actually measured in a thing called Mickey's. Where?
No.
Right? I'm like, okay. I thought that was fun. I was like, all right, Mickey's, that sounds cool. Oh, okay. So let's keep going because I'm looking at the time right now and I want to give you all as much time as possible to work on these studios. So let's talk about what we're supposed to be talking about today. Let's talk about the reality of app development. In this case, security in our authentication. But starting out just very simple where we've always already been. A user comes to our site and they want to see all of our dogs. They want to see all the dogs we possibly have. Me personally, I come to my site, I want to see my own dog. So I send a GET here that says dog/show. Show me all my dogs that I can't wait to have. So that sends over a request to the controller. That controller then says, okay, you want to see the dog show? Fine with me. I have all those dogs. It gets that view, brings it back in a response, and then it shows to the UI side. Nothing new here. We know how this works. But let's talk about the true dilemma we have. I wanted to see my dogs. They're all of my dogs. I want to edit their age. I want to edit their favorite treats. I know all that information. They're my dogs that are associated with me, and they're associated with me. So what we have here is those connections. But those are just kind of figurative connections. We don't actually have anything relating to us in the database besides our connections, but nothing's really protecting them at all. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean, if someone comes along and says, no, those are my dogs actually, I have nothing in place to protect me. Even more so when this imposter tries to ask the controller, say it's Cruella de Vil or something like that, asking the controller for all of Kyle's dogs. Well, the controller is like, I guess so. That's kind of fine. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. So basically right now, my dogs aren't protected. They might be mine, we might be associated together, but we have nothing in place to protect someone just coming in and stealing all of them away from me. So what we typically do in this app development is that the controller simply wants to find out who the real Kyle is. So they ask, so the controller basically says, I know these dogs belong to Kyle, so you need to prove that you're him. So it asks a secret, saying, what is Kyle's favorite food? Something very, very minuscule like that. You're gonna have one person answer, maybe it's emos, or maybe they answer it's cheesecake, obviously. Well, we all know what the correct answer is here, is that it's definitely cheesecake. And so we immediately can assume the imposter here. So where does this all go from? Basically, what we are asking here is a typical secret that only Kyle would know in order to prove who I am, and I'm actually the person I am on the other side of the screen that the controller can't see through. This is what we call authentication. Authentication is the process of proving who you are. You are basically, to be authenticated is to make sure that the person actually sitting behind the screen is the person that they say they are. We can do this through many things. It's not typically asking what your favorite food is. You all are familiar with these. The most common, of course, is passwords. That's that secret that the controller will typically ask. Another one would be trusted sources. This is actually a more up-and-coming one that you all have probably seen and maybe a little annoyed by it, but it's like two-factor authentication. So you can log into your phone if you click a button because that phone is trusted. You can log in maybe through a Google account that you're already logged in on. These are trusted sources that the website can actually authenticate you through. And then finally, another one is the physical. So this one has been around for a bit, but it's also very popular as well. It's your thumbprint or even your Face ID. These two things are ways to authenticate you are who you say you are. So let's see how we can actually implement this to do something. So say we have a UI. let me actually go up here, sorry. There we go. Boop. So say we have a UI. We're gonna have our username and password in there. Again, this is the secret that I'm gonna go with to authenticate. And we're gonna just type in a username and just type in some kind of password. And then what we do when we press submit here is that it sends over this information to our controller in order to do authentication. It sends it over to our server and we have to authenticate our users. In a very simplistic flow from 1,000 feet above, what happens here is that if it's incorrect, we just go back to the login screen. We return, this is not the user, you could not be authenticated. If the password and the username do match, you are authenticated and you get to view those dogs. This is very basic authentication. And if you work with any website or just been through any website whatsoever with your mail account or a calendar or something like that, you understand that this kind of authentication is what most websites will use. But we haven't really dove in too far into what's actually going on behind the scenes. So let's take a closer look at what's going on with authentication. We come back in here and we're going to type in that username and password once again. But as we know, when a user clicks the submit button, it's going to send over a request to our controller. That controller just got the username and password there. Typically what it does is that it will then go to the persistence layer, the database, specifically in a thing called the user table, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to see if that username and password truly do exist there. That's when it sends back the response, whether or not the user actually exists there and the user could be authenticated. Again, we're diving a little bit further deeper into this. So any questions so far about just this basic flow of authentication? All right, so in this, something actually special happens with our accepted or denied request with our username and password. So let's take a closer look at that. We come back in here, and if the user types in a username and a password that are not correct, as again, we know from just working with any kind of bad day where we cannot remember our password, that we just get redirected back into the login screen. So on a bad attempt, we just return them back to the login screen. But let's talk about if everything goes according to plan and you do get logged in. If that happens in any website, what happens is a session is created. On the server side, something actually happens in which we can now remember information. But let's take a closer look at exactly what is going on here in this session. So going back to our typical example, we have a user, we have a controller. The user wants to get the website from the controller and just view it. They want to say log in to their Amazon account or something like that to kind of basically see their preferences, their shippings, their orders, things like that. You've done this all the time. But the thing is that Amazon is not just, I don't have Amazon to myself, unfortunately. It's not just a one-to-one relationship here. We have many different clients trying to access Amazon at one time. So connecting directly to the server and having it just be a dedicated thing to you does not actually work in the real world. So what exactly happens here is that when a user logs in, an individual session is created in that server. So what happens there is that those users indirectly, or those users, whenever they log in, will be pointed to their own session. They will be given their own individual session that has all their information. So let's look at a session a little bit more clearly here. Like we said, so once a session is created, a unique ID will be created for it. So basically that session can be identified amongst millions and millions of sessions going on Amazon or Google or something like that, or your website here in the future. The other thing that it consists of is user information. Is the user logged in? What is the user's preferences? What color does the background on your website does the user want to see? Things like that. This session information can be held here. So one more thing also to note about this is that when your browser gets destroyed, or when you close your browser or whatever, your session will end. So just keep note of that. So continuing on, let's go ahead and see how this actually plays out. We type in our username and our password. We send over that request back over to the controller. The controller again creates that session. That session also comes with a unique ID, that session ID. And then a response is set. It says everything went according to plan, so we're all authenticated, but it also sends back the key, that unique session ID. When that ID is sent back, we create a very tasty tool on the UI side. Remember, the server has all that information. It's able to remember everything, but the client side has no idea what's actually going on. It's not actually saving any information yet, so we need something to save information to. In this case, we utilize a thing called cookies. That cookie will then save that unique session ID inside of it, along with also some user information that it wants. So the cookie is how we remember the session ID on the client side, and the session is remembered by the server on the server side. Hence this connection between the two. We need the session ID. And let's take a quick look at why. Again, we have that cookie on there, but say you're already authenticated, you're coming back into Amazon and you're trying to go to another page or whatever like that. So it's gonna send out like, hey, give me my preferences. So it's gonna send a request over there to your specific session with the key. So that key is sent over to the session. It's going to check that key against all of its different sessions and be like, okay, here you are. I found you, and now I remember who you are. You are authenticated, you're good. I like what you're doing. Everything's fine, so I send you back a response. And in this case, for whatever reason, it sends back dogs. That's what this key is doing. The cookie uses that key that was sent over by the server to authenticate every time it sends over a request. This keeps our session going and keeps our user information flowing properly through our server and also on the client side. So that was a lot. And that is actually the true background behind everything that's going on in the web. Whenever you're interacting on a website, this is what's happening. So any questions about any of this?
Why do they call it a cookie?
That should have been a fun fact. I don't actually know. I have no idea why. Gosh, I should have looked it up. I don't know. I can't even think of, I'm not even gonna like put an answer out there. I have no idea why they call it. Maybe something small and bite size that stores information, because cookies are very extremely small. But I don't know. They have tasty information. I have no idea. All right. So real quick, just to take a quick pause. One more last quick breath before we have to dive into one more thing. Who is more popular according to the Humane Society in the U.S. from 2017 to 2018? Birds or reptiles?
Reptiles. Birds.
Birds?
It was birds. Very good. Really? All right. How about horses or saltwater fish?
Horses.
Horses.
It was actually saltwater fish. It is. And actually, horses was the lowest on the totem pole for some reason. I don't know why people don't own more horses. I'd love to get a horse here.
Shark Week.
All right. The big one, cats versus dogs.
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 Cats actually almost are nearly double, actually.
Wow.
Yes. All right. Last one.
Finally.
Freshwater
Those
fish
people are
versus
self-loathing.
cats.
Freshwater fish.
Versus cats. Which
Cats.
one?
I say cats.
Still thinking cats? Everyone's still thinking cats? It was actually freshwater fish. You think the cats would eat the fish, but they don't. No, they still outnumber them. They repopulate too quickly, I guess. I don't know. So there you go. All right. Let's keep moving forward here. Let's talk about a little bit of hacking. Who's ever wanted to grow up and be a hacker? Don't admit to it. Just joking. Rhetorical question. But we all know we're kind of interested in it because it's always in the news. So let's talk about it. We already know that our username and our password come into the controller. Everything's honky-dory. This is authentication. Things are going to be authenticated. It is the username and the password match in the user database. We're all good there. But say we create a user. We have the dog father, which, by the way, I hope someone laughed at that. I thought it was hilarious. I was having a very, very low caffeinated morning. So I was like, that's funny. And I laughed my butt off. Anyway, the dog father and the password come in. We go to our user table and we create our user table to save our users and our passwords. Remember, we also have that ID column in there as well, as always. Now, the tempting thing would be to say ID of 1, the dog father, and then the password, which of course my very super secret password is pizza. This would be a tempting way to construct our user table. However, this was very much back in the day, but today in practice is absolutely disregarded, not recommended whatsoever, extremely deprecated. You never want to save your passwords in its true form here. Because all you have to do, all the hacker has to do, is get into your database, your user database, and immediately has access to all of your users and their passwords. Not only is your site compromised, but that means that password and that username are compromised on hundreds of other sites. This is why security is extremely important in your databases. Don't think your database is protected at all. Once it's on the internet, you're basically like in Times Square. Anyone has access to it if they know how to get in there. So we need to make sure we protect our stuff. We need a better way to protect our passwords. Hence, enter in that famous word, encryption. Everyone overuses this word, and I love it. I love when people talk about encryption because it sounds really complex. It makes you sound really smart at the dinner table, but it's actually, if you break it down, it kind of means it's more straightforward than you actually think. But let's just take a look at it. Encryption, in a very bleak overview, is making human readable stuff unreadable. That's it. You're going to encrypt something. You're just making the word pizza turn into something that is not distinguishable. To do this, to actually turn it into something unreadable, we use a mechanism called hashing. That's what we're going to be talking about here. Are there other ways to authenticate or to encrypt? Yes, but in this case, we're just going to be talking about hashing for encryption. So hashing is a method or a formula that takes in data and jumbles it up in a consistent, keyword consistent way. Let's take a look at an example. We have pizza. We throw this through a hash formula, a hash method. And what comes out is just some weird text. This is hashing. There we go, done. Book closed. This is basically hashing right here. Well, not basically, this is literally hashing. As somebody smart, somewhere far away, created this hashing formula in order to do this. But let's keep taking a look at other examples because I can't leave you guys just hanging like that. So let's take a look at dog. Dog gets jumbled up, it creates a completely different string here. Dogs jumbled up through the hashing mechanism. We have a very different text here. Now let's go back to pizza. We throw it through the hashing algorithm again, and it has the same string as last time. This is what we mean by consistent. The hashing algorithm needs to be repeatable. If we throw in the same word, it should produce the same hash. This is extremely important of a hashing algorithm to do so. And let's discuss why. Let's talk about two-way encryption first. We'll bring back that pizza. We'll throw it through our hashing algorithm. But for a two-way encryption, we actually put in an encryption key, some kind of different password that we know we encrypted it with. That then jumbles it up and gives us this string that we can now send securely across emails and stuff, because no one's going to be able to decipher this. Well, hopefully not. Somebody smart out there probably can, but majority of people cannot. But two-way encryption comes in where we take in that hash code, we put in the decryption key, and we're able to recreate the human readable data. In essence, two-way encryption can encrypt and decrypt between the hashes to reproduce the human readable form of the message. This is really cool for sending, again, documents via email to other people across the world and knowing that it's not going to get hacked. But this is not a good way of saving passwords. What's the point of two-way encryption of the password if the person can just recrack it and recreate it sometime else? Again, that password can be hacked easily. Not easily at all. I use easily with a very big grain of salt. Very smart people, again, out there have to hack it, but it's still possible. Especially if you have enough time, maybe in the midst of a global pandemic where you're stuck at home or something. Anyway, the other one we have is not two-way, but one-way encryption. This is where we take a word again, we throw it through a hashing algorithm, and we get that same text back. The different one thing about this one is that we take that hash and we put it through the decryption algorithm. Well, this doesn't exist. There's no decryption algorithm for a one-way encryption. Once it's hashed, it stays hashed. There's no way to bring it back to its original human readable form. It's literally impossible for a human to do that. So this right here is a way we can encrypt our passwords and never be able to recreate them or get them hacked. Hence, enter the user table. When we want to save passwords, again, we don't want to save them in their typical form here with pizza, we want to save it as a hash. So we take out that column and we actually put in the password hash here to save these passwords. Now someone actually comes into our database to try to steal all of our information. Our users are actually protected because the hashes here are what covers up the password. Additionally, they can't log in through our website because they would need to know the true word that again gets jumbled up by the hashing algorithm to match it against this database. Hence, our passwords here are truly protected, or at least more protected. So, how exactly does this all work truly? For that, we're going to go over here. Again, I do recommend going through these exercises prior if you do want to actually see exactly what's in the code. I'm using a lot of Chris's code here just to save us time because I know we are on a bit of a time crunch tonight. So what I want to show you is real quick to begin, we need to actually implement security into our application. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And while I'm doing that, if there's any questions, feel free to shout it out.
Just a quick question. I mean, if somebody figured out what your hash was, couldn't they just figure out what all of the passwords are?
So we have a one-way encryption. So if they get the hashes, they technically cannot or they can't reverse engineer it to find out the original password. Okay. So that's the best thing about one-way encryption is that if you get the hashes, that's fine. But if you get my hash for pizza, you can't type that in the password line on the login screen because my password pizza is not the hash. We convert pizza to the hash and then we're going to compare it to the database. Okay,
I got you.
Spring security. So PTO, Jerry, geez. Okay, Spring security crypto, let's redo that Gradle. And then as it's doing that, let's go ahead and I'm gonna introduce you all to our user model. And this will hopefully answer a little bit of some questions about what exactly we're doing here. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick at some of the things here in this user. So as always, we have our empty constructor. It's we have our not null, all that fun stuff. That's fine. And then we have here, let's take a closer look at this constructor. We have a setter here for the username, but the password is looking a little different. Note that in the user, we never store the password in its true text form. We only store the hash. This is for security purposes. You will never want to store the password in its true text form. When the user gives you their password, you immediately hash it. And that is what you use to compare to the database in order to authenticate them. There's no reason to keep the password in its true raw form because everything will be dealt with the hashes. So let's go ahead and import this. So that is why we have this here. Next, as always, we have to come up, and once we do this, we need to create a nice repo. So I already created my user repo here. In the example, it's very nice. They have a find by username method already created for this interface. So I just kept that there because sometimes you want to just find by the user name, which is very helpful. And then let's go ahead and hop over to the controller. We're going to create an authentication controller, and you'll be seeing a lot of this in your studio tonight. So I'm going to come down here, remove that, and then a lot of stuff in here, again, is from his example, and I'll go through as much of it as I possibly can, but let's go ahead and import these classes real quick, and then we'll go ahead and do that. There we go. And then our user repository, import class. Fantastic. Okay. That. Yeah, no, I wanted. Oh. Oh, I was like, what am I doing wrong? So I go back to our user here, and then it needs to be an entity, but also we need to provide an integer, private integer ID, and then ID, and then generate value. Okay, so bringing that in, import class, persistence. Okay. Oh, and then of course my getters. Right click, go to generate. I'm gonna just create my getter for my ID, press OK. There we go. All right, and what is your problem? Okay, so once we have our controller there, and then we have, I've updated that. And then finally, we're gonna import these guys. Cool, cool, cool. Looks like things are happy again. Awesome. All right, so after the controller, we also have our HTML here, and the HTML is very straightforward. We have a login that is a username with an input and a password with an input. Just note that the password is of type password, so this is how you cover up your actual password in a password input. But going to the user here, or excuse me, I need the user controller. There we go. All right, so what's gonna happen when we register? So I'm gonna go ahead and start up our server and let that start running as we begin here. So what I'm gonna have to do first for any kind of user is register them. So what we do is that if we are going to register them to get the registration form, we use the get mapping. To actually start creating the user, we have to do a post mapping. So we'll go through that really briefly. So here we have a registration form DTO. Remember, DTOs are what we're going to be using to pass around data to our controller on posts now. So coming up here to our DTOs, going to our registration form DTO, we have our verify password basically in there to get that. And then we have our, yeah, let's see here. Yeah, registration form DTO. Where am I? Oh, thank you. I was like, what am I doing? It extends the login DTO. So I guess I can show everybody this now. So for login form DTO, we have our username and our password. And then for the registration one, it adds the verify password. Of course, in a typical form, you have to verify your password with the password you want to create in order to create this username or whatever, to create the account. So that being said, what we're going to come down here is what this one, of course, we've already seen this, is for validation. We're just checking to see if the form actually has errors. If it doesn't, we're going to move on. This section here sees if the user already exists. Just like if you're trying to log into Google and you use your Google account, you can't because the username already exists, the email already exists. So that's what that's checking. This part is just checking if the passwords actually match or mismatch. If not, all that fun stuff leads us down to here. We're now going to create the user. We immediately put the password into the new user, which again will hash it. So we have our hash here. We'll then save the user. So again, we never save those solid forms of the password, we're saving the hash. So that is what this is going to do here.
Can I
and
ask
then,
a quick?
yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, I was just going to say, whenever the login or a register form extends from login form, I guess it doesn't matter which one extends from the other, just kind of like when they're created.
For the registration form, it would matter because everything from login form is going to be brought into registration form.
I feel
So
like you register first. Oh, sorry.
You're correct. In that flow, you would register first and then log in, but we're talking right now about our inheritance. So we're talking about who needs what in inheritance. So the registration form needs everything in the login form and the verify password. So flipping it around would actually change around the properties of who's bringing in what. So I would challenge you to try changing them around in your own program, of course, branching off if you want, and see the difference. But essentially, how we're doing it now is how we should inherit our stuff. We can dive a little bit more into detail if you want offline about that, but it does absolutely matter.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So final thing here, I'm going to go over to our pet database, go into tables, refresh all. Let's see, I need to go into our tables. We have a bunch of stuff now. What we're gonna do is actually just drop all these and drop now. And we're gonna go ahead and start the server. I do apologize. I know we're not gonna get to everything tonight because again, I do wanna give you enough time, but this authentication, I do highly recommend diving as deep as you can and want to into it, because when we do when you move to liftoff, authentication will be a big part of your program. Just a heads up on that. So that being said, come over here, refresh all on this. And then we have all of our tables created. Let's go over here. We're gonna say register. All right, our username is gonna be the dog father. And I'm gonna just type in password for that, password for that. Register. And there we go. I'm on my own site now. Awesome. Let's go ahead and see what it did real quick in the database. Over here, we're going to look at our tables. And this is what it's going to look like. We have our ID of one, our first user, and then our password hash. Again, this is from that Bcrypt encryption function. It encrypted our password to be shown here in the database. And then we have our username, of course. So what does this mean again? It means whenever a user tries to log in now, we'll go over here, let's type in /login, that when I type in my username, and then I type in my password again, and I press login, what it does is that it immediately hashes that password and comes over and compares the hash to the one stored in the database. Because we know hashes are repeatable, the two hashes should match if the passwords actually match. Therefore, this is a way we can authenticate without actually having to store users' information. All right, knowing that now I am actually at time here because I don't want to take on too much, I am going to stop here, and hopefully maybe I can mention a few things next class. But I'm going to open up here for any kind of questions for the next few minutes. We have about 3 minutes left before I want to give you all over to your smaller groups. But any questions here? Any last minute questions that I can help you out with? Anything I didn't cover that you really want to get to?
Log out.
I was gonna say, what's the difference between one-way verification or encryption and two-way encryption, as far as like the code for it?
Was that last part, Jeremy?
Like as far as the code for it, like is it? Trying to figure out the words. It's more like just is it like more coding for two-way than one-way encryption?
It would be, because you also have to create an encryption and decryption key as well. So it's going to be a little bit more intense to do two-way, but it is possible. I would say explore it. Let me see if I can. I'm not too familiar with Bcrypt, so let me see if I can actually grab that. What is that in user? So yeah, in here for the encoder and encode, I'm assuming, at least with the encryption libraries I work with, that beyond password, you'd also type in an encryption key right here that you would only know. And then you'd have a decode method that you type in the decryption key and get the information back. So that would be the extra steps for two-way authentication. It will differ for Bcrypt because this is a different library, but I do challenge you to feel free to explore that. Look up how to do two-way encryption using Bcrypt. I'm sure there's definitely Stack Overflows about it. All right.
So
Any other questions? Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, so we just take for granted, I guess, like that every site that we go to and have register and log in hopefully does at least one-way encryption, I guess, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My other question was going to be about the logout, the book, chapter 19, like the very last thing. It says like the code for this section is available in the login registration forms branch.
Okay.
I'm like, what is that? Where is the code? I guess. I mean, which folder package? Or like which?
Yeah. Which branch did it say it was in?
It said it was in the login reg forms branch.
I'd have to see that.
I've been
What chapter did you say it was in? 19.
Chapter 19, yeah, 0.4.6.
I'll look at that and see exactly what branch they're talking about because I'm not seeing a login reg branch here. So I'm going to have to take a look at that. Good question. I will get back to you on that.
Thanks.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? Again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to dive into everything with authentication today, but we did get to the meat of it, which was that one-way encryption. Just remember that's how our passwords are stored. All right. Any final things? Let me go find Slack. Where are you at? All right. Okay, then one last final announcement before I actually let everybody go, and I'm going to stop sharing, that there will not be a studio review for this particular studio, but I did put out a small video that just goes over authentication more in depth than I was able to get to in this class, just in case. So I will be, or feel free to see that on the lecture studio area. Go ahead and just, it should just be like introduction into authentication. I'm sure anybody who's gone through my YouTube channel now has seen that. Feel free to just watch that. It will go over just the basics of authentication. And then tonight's studio will be utilizing all of that and coding it. Remember, read section 9 or read chapter 19 very closely to help you out to basically finish up this last part of the studio. So that being said, thank you everybody for joining me. If there's no other questions, or if you do have any questions, feel free to Slack me. Other than that, have a very safe week. I will not see everybody on Thursday. Remember, no lecture, but I will see everybody back here on Monday. Other than that, y'all have been awesome. Have a great night.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. Have a good one.
Kyle. Have a good one. See you.